Hi everyone, my name is Sarah Kong. I'm a Microsoft Technical Trainer. I'm a Microsoft Certified Trainer. And this is the AZ-104 Exam Prep Series. This video will focus on the Compute Resources Objective Domain. So with this objective domain, you're going to need to know about ARM templates. You're going to need to know a little bit about Bicep files, not too much, but a little bit. You're also going to need to know how to create and configure those virtual machines for the exam. You'll also need to know how to provision and manage those in the portal. And finally, your Azure App Services, right? So that PaaS solution. But the compute services, for the most part, focuses on the infrastructure as a service component and then goes into, as you can see in here, kind of our PaaS solution. So I'm going to walk you through all of this and let you know what you need to know for the exam. All right, so let's begin. So the first thing you want to know, or for the exam, is the ARM templates, right? So know that this is a JSON language. Know that these templates that you know how to interpret them. So you need to know how to read them, not necessarily how to write, right? So this exam focuses on you being able to read a JSON template and know what's going on, right? The fact that these ARM templates are what you use to deploy your resources in Azure. The other thing you'll need to know is the Bicep files, right? So same thing as the JSON or ARM templates is that the fact that you need to be able to read that. So interpret that Bicep file. You'll see in the exam you might get an output of a Bicep file and you'll need to get a drop down where you need to know what is the line that's missing, and it'll be a multiple choice. How to create a virtual machine, right? What is required for a virtual machine? So, what are the basic requirements? The fact that you need disks, networking management, and some of those advanced configurations that are some optional. Know what those are, know how to configure them. This is also a big piece that you need to know, right? The virtual machine sizes. You might get those types of questions where they're asking you, you need a compute workload that needs, high throughput data, right? So these might be your high performance computing. So that would be your H series. Or you're just testing a piece of software that's very, not as complex. So that could be maybe an entry level. So know that the different virtual machine sizes and what we like to call them families, and then that way you can get those questions solved properly. So the other thing is, once you create that virtual machine and you have that family and you know what the families are, the other thing that you want to know is how to manage those disks, right? Know that there's different types of disks, you can add disks, and those types of disks would be an SSD, HHD, right? So the HDD, and the SSD types disks. Know when you would use one over the other. Know how to configure that disk encryption, right? So going in and working with key vaults. So be aware, you should all be very familiar with this page and understanding of everything on this page for the exam. Availability zones versus availability sets, right? Understand that this is working with high availability, right? So that type of disaster recovery. Why we would use zones? Well, that is within a region redundancy, right? So within that region. And availability sets. Know that, they're working with your different tiers. So if I have a data tier and a web tier, they would be all in their own separate availability sets. And then if I need that high performance computing, that's when I look at virtual machine scale sets. So for virtual machine scale sets, know that's when you're going to be working with performance, right? So you want that high availability, but you also want the machines to perform when they need to. Right? And that's going to be part of that auto scaling. So know the difference between vertical, horizontal, and auto scaling. Right? Know that you can scale up and scale down, and what's the difference between the two of those. Know that you can move your virtual machines to other resource groups, subscriptions, and other regions. What goes with it? You might see that in the exam. So when you actually go into the portal or use a PowerShell command line or CLI and you specify to move that virtual machine, what is the requirement that need to move with that virtual machine? So know that for the exam. So the other big compute workloads that you need to know about is containers, right? And we talk about ACR, ACA, ACI. right? Know the difference between the three and when you would use one over the other. ACR, as you can see here, is the first one in here, and that's your registry. So this is where you would go in and manage your code, right? And that is what your ACI and ACA would connect to. So know this. This is your Docker registry. This also gives you your 3 tiers. And then the other one is, as I mentioned a second ago, is your ACI. So this is your single instance. So creating a single container, a lot of times you'll see questions in the exam when they talk about test or development of containers. This is probably what you're going to see as an answer. So working with container instances. You've also got your Azure Container Apps. So this is our newer capability that gives us that alternative to Kubernetes. Kubernetes is no longer on the exam, so you won't see a focus on that. So the focus will be more on ACA. So understanding how the container registry can connect to your ACA and have an understanding of all of that. Do the labs on that, right? So that way you get a good hands-on. So the main thing is understanding that sizing and scaling of containers as well. And that's all part of the ACI and ACA. So understanding, again, the difference between the two. When you would use one, how would you scale and size between those two? The other PaaS solution that we have, right? So moving into PaaS solutions is our Azure App Services. Right? Now there's the Azure App Service plan and the Azure App Service. So know the difference between these. And as you can see in this one, I think of the plan is kind of like your template. Right? So where you configure, those settings, know that's what the App Service plan is used for, and that it is very region specific, and that you can also scale with your App Service plan. So working with your scaling in and scaling up. You can do scale up, scale out, right? So scale out, that increases the number of VM instances, where the scale up will change that plan, right? So know that and be aware of that. And then the other thing too that you'll see in the exam is the licensing, right? So when you go in and you apply your app service plan, there's different tiers of licensing with that premium, standard, basic. Know that. You'll definitely see that on the exam. So the whole creating and managing the app service. So how to create an app service, and that the app service goes with an app service plan. So they kind of go hand in hand together. Right? And then based on the license that you pick, what features are you going to get? So will you be able to work with deployment slots? Will I be able to scale up and scale out? Will I be able to run backups? That's all about the licensing. And that's all, again, part of your app service plan. So know all of that. So to recap for the compute resources of the exam prep, be aware of ARM and Bicep templates. Be aware meaning know how to read them. Right? You don't necessarily need to know how to write them, but you need to know how to look at an ARM template or Bicep file and know what's going on. Right? Be aware of the family sizes. Right? So the different families that you'll see, your G, your H family, and so on. What are the requirements to create a VM? Right? So all the virtual machine requirements, like you need a hard disk, you need networking, you need, how you can attach or detach a hard disk, and so on. What are the different types of hard disks? Be aware of all of that. And then know the difference between ACA, ACI, and ACR. Right? So those are the 3 focuses on containers. And then finally, be aware of the app service, right? Be aware meaning, that you have the app service and you have the app service plan. So know the difference between the two, that they work hand in hand. Understand that, there are different licenses, right, that you configure in the app plan that'll give you different features. And features being, if I can spell here, the different features being, can I create a deployment slot? Can I do backups? Can I do scaling? So all of these things you'll need to know to pass the compute resource section of your exam.